Before this, you marketed products to a very aspirational view. That's changed a lot. I don't think there's a lot of people, that aspirational goal has been replaced by this new way of new consumerism of survival. So the question is how do you fit your product into this new consumer ideology of life? And I think a lot of brands are starting to see that it's not just performance messaging, and everyone sees it. Your current customers, your future customers, prospecting, remarketing. It's not mechanical. It's real. It's real marketing.
Hey everybody, John Giorso here. On this episode of eCommerce Deep Dive, I speak with Steve Weiss, founder and CEO of MuteSix. Steve and I talk about D2C and the impact of COVID-19 on the channel. We talk about how it's impacted consumer ideology and how they've shifted from aspirational to survival mode, how it's impacted digital ad spend and how that works for and against D2C brands, new opportunities, and how brands should respond to uncertainty. I got a lot of value out of this conversation. I think you will too. I hope you enjoy. All right, Steve, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So, it'd be great to hear a little bit, or our audience to hear a little bit about just your background and what MuteSix does.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it, man. So I started MuteSix almost 7 years ago, 2013, end of 2012, early 2013. I have a bit of an odd background. A lot of, we always take different paths to entrepreneurship, and I've always learned a lot from a lot of other people as far as their paths and my path. And my path is unique. I moved to LA in 2013 or 2012 with a very humble goal. I wanted to, try my hand at stand-up comedy. I wanted to see if I could become just another Jewish comedian. Oddly enough, there are these things called bringer shows where you got to bring people through these comedy shows to get stage time. And I started running Facebook ads to get people to come to my bringer shows. And little did I know that I was kind of putting myself in the middle of this, or I kind of stumbled upon in the middle of this new phenomenon, which was direct to consumer. And at the time I was running ads for comedy. Then I got approached by a product owner on Shopify. The first company I ever personally worked on was a candle company. And it really fit my specific skill set, being a creative as well as a performance marketer. So I started MuteSix 2013, and the vision of MuteSix was a bit unique. A lot of brands, they have both their creative agency as well as their performance marketing agency, and my goal was to bridge the gap. We wanted to build both a creative studio as well as a performance marketing, component to our agency. And we've been, over the last 7 years, we've been very successful at launching specifically direct to consumer brands and getting, traction, profitability, and scale rather quickly.
Okay, that's a great place to start. I know it's hard to have a conversation these days. It's May 7th for people's reference point here, but it's hard to have a conversation without talking about the COVID impact on business, on consumer behavior, on psychology, on I know a lot of the things that you spend time thinking about. So how has COVID changed the way that you do what you do? I mean, specifically related to, how should brands be thinking about it? How should they be changing their messaging? How should they be thinking about the consumer in this kind of new normal that we're living in?
Yeah, I think that's one of the most important topics I think we can discuss in this podcast. So 2 months ago, we're marketing to a different consumer. The consumer 2 months ago had different expectations, different thoughts going through their minds. They were in almost like a different world 2 months ago. And I think, fast forward till now, this consumer is very worried. They see everything on the news feed is doom, 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 doom. And I think we have to figure out, when we market a product, how do we bring positivity into the lives of possible consumers? How do we bring something very needed into their life? How do we not sound tone deaf? How do we make our brand aware of the circumstances going on in this crisis? I still see people marketing products without understanding the time. I see people with traveling backgrounds in their ads, and like the Eiffel Tower and this and that, and I feel like a lot of that is very tone deaf right now. That's why marketing travel is very difficult, because before this it was very, you marketed products to a very aspirational view. Oh, I'd love to be able to go to Italy or France or any of these countries, and it was very aspirational. You see people there, you're like, I want to be that. Well, that's changed a lot. I don't think there's a lot of people that aspirational goal has been replaced, by this new consumerism of survival. I think a lot of people are like, wow, I just lost my job, I'm unemployed. Like, I'm not thinking of going to Paris, or that's just so far out of my out of my view of what I can do in life. And now I just want to survive. So the question is how do you fit your product into this new consumer ideology of life? And I think a lot of brands are starting to see that it's not just performance, it's just messaging, and everyone sees it. Your current customers, your future customers, prospecting, remarketing. It's not mechanical, it's real marketing.
Hey everyone, John Giorso here. I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. I wanted to let you know that this episode has been brought to you by Orca Pacific, the agency I founded to help brands succeed on the Amazon platform. If you need any services that relate to success on the platform, whether it be content, advertising, SEO, help on the back end when it comes to operational support, etc., training for your team, or even just some advice on a place you may be stuck, feel free to reach out to our team. The best way to get in touch with us is on LinkedIn or at orcapac, orcapac.com. And with that, we'll get back to the show. For me, there's some products that come to mind that, are probably easier to fit into that framework that, are what Amazon at least would call, from my purview, essential. But for those products that are more discretionary in nature, tell me more about how you specifically approach that. A product that they don't have to buy it to survive, but there's still plenty of purchasing going on that is beyond just the immediate things I need to live through this week. How are you approaching those?
I think we have to shine these specific products on the light on how these products bring happiness and joy and purpose to people's lives. I think that's number one. If your product doesn't have an essential purpose of survival, if your product isn't, something that people need in their daily lives, then you have to really figure out, how does your product bring a sense of normalcy, bring a sense of purpose, bring a sense of happiness and joy? Because right now, you're fighting for dollars with a lot of brands. You're fighting for these consumer dollars for products. And I think that's the thing that we're all trying to figure out. Obviously, there is an uptick in e-commerce. I think this month it has been huge for us. Last month has been huge, which is a bigger topic of why. Why has the stock market gone up on May 7th? We've seen an uptick in the stock market. We've seen an uptick in paid spend. Is that real? Is it fake? Who knows? But I think what we do know is that stores are closed. Like all of America, most of America right now, retail stores are closed. So they have to buy, and Amazon's taking 2-3 weeks to deliver. So like, where are you going to go? So where are you going to? You're going to look for stuff on Google. You're going to do some searching, and then you're going to see a Facebook ad, and you're going to buy. So I think it's really interesting, this new consumer behavior.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Yeah, I know. I think we're obviously in this time of kind of unprecedented consumer behavior shift, but one of the things that we've seen as a result is people willing to try channels that they haven't tried before, almost all those being online, and then they're willing to try brands that they haven't tried before. Mostly, both of those are out of necessity. They need a thing and they can't go to a store, or they want a thing and they usually buy a brand, but they can't get it, or they have to wait 3 weeks to get it. So they're willing to kind of try somebody else. Especially in kind of the consumables, which I guess would mostly be in that kind of survival, at least quasi survival essential categories. How are you thinking about that in terms of lifetime customer value, in terms of encouraging that kind of that new trial, when people are maybe more willing to go outside of their kind of typical behaviors?
No, I think we're looking at it. We want to generate prospecting new customers. That's a big KPI, I think, for every brand. You see a lot of brands right now doing very, very aggressive price cuts. I think people are trying. I think brands right now are looking at their balance sheets and saying, we don't know what the future is going to hold. We don't know what June, July, August. We don't know if people spend all their stimulus checks and consumer spending goes down on e-commerce. Nobody really knows, and because of that, I feel like people are discounting on their site to just stack cash. I think a lot of these companies are just trying to build a war chest of money so that if something does go wrong, they have some survival cash and survival, money. And that's why you're seeing, across the board that a number of these e-commerce businesses have slashed prices. And, I think it's, that's the number one thing right now, is to really conserve capital at all costs.
Interesting. Yeah. You mentioned as kind of a side comment earlier that um, the dynamics of paid media, especially I would let's focus maybe on Google for now, have changed. How have they changed? Has it gotten more expensive, less expensive? Is there more traffic on Google in some of these categories? Is there kind of an overall takeaway, or it might depend on vertical as well?
No, I think they've all changed. I think, traffic, big brand advertisers, you're talking about the travel business is gone. Like, you talk about hundreds of millions of dollars, if not billions of dollars a year in spend disappeared overnight. Like, overnight, United Airlines, American Airlines, Carnival Cruises, none of these people are buying media. And even other brands that focus on retail are cutting back on spend. They're getting rid of all brand campaigns. If it's a brand campaign that's not showing an ROI, cut it. And what this has is had a positive impact on lowering, the CPMs on all these platforms. We're seeing it across the board that Facebook, Google, I mean, it's getting less and less and less expensive to reach these consumers, which for us as a marketing agency is obviously amazing. Like, I talk to you today and say our numbers are pretty good, but I'm worried about the unpredictability of what the future holds. I still think there's a deep sense of unpredictability, and I think I'm trying to. The thing I ask myself every single day is, how do I save jobs? How do I save jobs? How do I save jobs? Because I care so deeply about the bigger picture to what I do on a daily basis. So, I'm trying to both save and create jobs at the same time. And I think, as a marketing agency, similar to you, man, like, we do that by getting performance for our clients, which allows us to hire more and make a positive impact. And it's on my mind all the time.
Yeah, I certainly understand that. It's for me this whole uh, kind of series of events over the last couple months has really kind of crystallized our mission, and I know you feel the same way, which is that we're in a fortunate position to be in a channel that's actually growing right now. But that doesn't mean that everything's rosy for our clients. I mean, for a lot of brands in general, like retail's getting decimated, the overall pie is shrinking. So I really feel a personal responsibility to like maximize, if there's a bright spot in e-commerce, we need to make that as bright as humanly possible to offset all the other kind of chaos and damage that's going on across retail. So, being in a performance marketing business where really you're focused on actually driving sales and ROI and like, very kind of attributable results. Have you recommended your clients get more aggressive now that essentially that, paid media is cheaper? Do you see there as being kind of more opportunity that they need to take advantage of now, or is it a more conservative approach?
Yeah, I mean, I think, we're consistently telling our clients that, we're being very transparent. We don't know what the future holds. Right now, CPMs are low and you're getting a lot of efficiency. Let's double down. Let's see how much, see as long as you have inventory, let's see how much inventory we can move. And, I think about this a lot. I mean, getting back to the bigger picture of what you do and why you do it. For me, it's easy for me to say, let's keep the quarantine going. Let's, do this for 2-3 months or however long And I think about this a lot of like it's easy for me without being very empathetic, but the reality is that people are out of work. People can only deal with this for a certain period of time, and like I don't go outside. I sit here and I work every day, and it's easy. I'm comfortable. I live a good life, but like I think sometimes when you're in your like, and I think some people struggle with this is when you're in your own little world, you forget what other people are going through, and you forget the empathy that you usually have from seeing people on a daily basis. And I think it's very important to touch on that as a marketer and as a psychology person, as someone who runs a company, that having a constant sense of empathy is not only attributable to future success, but it also is going to allow you to have a much bigger impact on this world, a much greater positive impact, should I say.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think we're in the same position where our businesses have been stable throughout this, obviously because of the consumer shift online. I'm sure we're both sitting in our air conditioned home offices working away. It is easy to forget that there are people and millions of people as a result in the U.S. alone that are really rough spot because of this. And there's the kind of overall societal impact, but then there's the very practical impact that those same people are our clients' customers. So those are the people that we're actually trying to reach out to on behalf of our clients or in partnership with them. And it goes back to that empathy piece and the messaging piece. I'm sure, like a lot of people, I've seen some of that totally kind of misses the mark, tone deaf messaging. Like no one updated their ads basically since February. And then I've seen kind of a more nuanced version of this. I've seen some really good advertising, some really good messaging and creative. But then I've seen messaging maybe that falls somewhere in between, which is sort of, it's contextual in the sense that it's acknowledging the impact of COVID, but it maybe seems inauthentic or kind of gimmicky. Do you have any perspective on that and how you walk the line between that sort of contextual, authentic, really resonates with consumers' messaging and honestly the way that doesn't work as well?
Yeah, it's. I have so many thoughts on that. I think consumers say this a lot, that the consumer is a lot smarter and a lot more self-aware than they were a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. You're marketing to a different segment of society. Even the 45 plus who are buying stuff on Facebook, the individuals that are, the baby boomer and as well as the next generation, right, preceding the baby boomer, they're getting more and more savvy. So they know right away if you're tone deaf to their situation. But they also see the brands that they're connecting with. That's why having a social cause or connecting your brand to a social impact is so important, because beyond just giving a product or service, people just want to align themselves with an end goal that they really feel empowered by. And I push a lot the narrative of social impact. And trust me, I didn't think that way 6 months ago. I wasn't telling people you need a social impact to your brand. Like I'm not one of those rah people that just said you need to do a social impact. But right now, people need some form of an inspiration.
Yeah. Yeah. I think people in crisis do kind of crave, connection with the kind of bigger values, and aspirations, especially when people are literally disconnected from one another, in addition just to the, financial or mental strain. So yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. Interesting. What else, Steve? What else are you thinking about right now? What else do you think would be good for a marketing, branding, e-commerce audience to be aware of?
I mean, I just think right now is the time to go direct to consumer. I know there's a lot of brands probably listening that have partnerships on Amazon, have partnerships on other wholesale relationships, and there's never a better time than right now to really diversify your product offering and build an omni-channel strategy that has both marketplaces and direct to consumer built in. I think there is a lot of fear with damaging some of those wholesale relationships with with a D2C strategy. But I think that right now people are learning that they can't be over invested in any specific area. And I think that's the big learning from this, is that the area that was your bread and butter, now you need two or three bread and butters. You need to really figure out, like, how do I diversify my offering? How do I get new customers from different places, and how do I really understand the expectations of these customers? And I think that's the one thing I'd love for people to take away from listening to this podcast, is that diversification is a means of survival.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think, when I look at the sort of world of different consumer brands out there, I think there's the companies that kind of have direct to consumer in their DNA. They'd never consider doing anything, they would never walk away from it. They've done it from day one, the digitally native guys. And then there's kind of the big or mid-sized national brands that have been around for 20, 30, 50 years or longer, that in some cases have adopted D2C and get it. They've been doing it for 5 years, but in a lot of cases are pretty hesitant to jump in. Talk to me about maybe what those brands, how they should realistically look at D2C. What are the fears that get overblown? What are some of the things they have to focus on? Like, what do they do wrong? What do they not do right when they approach it? Like, just, high level, mid-market national brand, new to D2C. How should they be thinking about it?
I mean, they're obviously scared. I think there's a lot of fear that whatever they do will hurt their core business. I think that's a big fear, is that when you have something that's doing really well, and I get it. Like, a lot of people I talk to that are doing Amazon, their companies are doing really well. And how do you open up a new traffic channel, a new sales channel, without negatively impacting what you're currently doing? And there is, just prices on Amazon that they have products set away for Amazon. The supply chain is very important. How do you know how much product to start D2C? I think there's a lot of, like, more or less questions that are unanswered right now. So I think there's a lot of hesitancy there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, do like, if they decide, okay, we know D2C is important, we're going to get it done this year, and you're helping these brands, what are some of the biggest misconceptions? Like what are they afraid of that they actually shouldn't be afraid of, or what are they not afraid of that they should be looking out for?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of brands just automatically think they're going to cannibalize what they're currently doing, and I just don't think that's the reality. The universe for your product is very big, and the way to think about it is that you're only capturing such a small segment of the population. So obviously market share, market share, market share, and with D2C, you have abilities to really reach these consumers without ever paying for it. You can reach them through email. You don't have to keep spending money and money to reach these consumers. So there's a ton of equity value that could be had. And I just think it's fear of the unknown. And I get it. Like, there's stuff that I'm scared of with doing with my business, but I just think overall it's this fear of what the unknown is.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny because we could mirror this conversation in reverse, and I could talk about D2C brands being afraid to go on Amazon. And it's actually very similar in a really interesting way. They're afraid of cannibalization. They're afraid of, kind of unnecessary competition. They're afraid of losing control, or just generally kind of the unknown. So, it's interesting to hear you say that, because I think maybe it's just a more kind of fundamental issue of newness, and this is going to be a new, different thing. So, interesting. Well, Steve, I know we're getting kind of close to time here. Anything else that you think our audience should know?
No, I think our bread and butter specifically is helping brands navigate a very tumultuous, very cumbersome process of becoming profitable on D2C, of really scaling the amount of customers, the amount of people consuming your product, and being able to show profitability on a P&L and really helping plan and navigate, the future growth of the brand as they expand into multi-channel. And I'm happy to, be a resource any way I can to your audience, and I'm happy to really just make a positive impact in this world. So I appreciate you, John, asking me to come on this podcast, and hopefully, we'll get through this together, man. I know it'll be an interesting time over the next couple months.
Yeah, I totally agree. So, if people do want to learn more about you, they want to get connected with you, they want to learn more about MuteSix, what's the best way to do that?
Oh, they can reach me directly at steve@mutesix.com, steve@mutesix.com.
Awesome. That's easy enough. Steve, thanks so much for being on the show.
Hey, definitely. Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again for listening to another episode of eCommerce Deep Dive. Be sure to subscribe to your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. And if you get a chance, go in and leave us a rating. It would help a lot. Thanks again, and talk to you soon.